2021 is expected to be one of the 7 hottest years in recorded history. The past 12 months of extreme weather events have shattered records and cost lives around the world. But among the destruction, there's hope. As Sarah Morice reports, this year's COP26 climate change conference may not have delivered all that was wished for, but it does leave the world with a fighting chance.
Wildfires raged across the Northern Hemisphere, from Greece and Turkey to Siberia and the United States. Europe and Asia were inundated by floods. Tornadoes and hurricanes swept across America. Canada and the Arctic Circle posted their highest temperatures on record, while in Texas, the mercury plunged to its lowest in 43 years. And in Kenya, along with other parts of East Africa, a locust plague devastated crops and farmland.
It's really made us look again at some of those climate change projections and think, we really need to know what's coming in the future, and perhaps the future is already here.
Governments need to know because they need to budget for the damage the extreme weather will wreak.
The World Bank estimates that natural disasters are costing around $18 billion a year at the moment, just to countries themselves. And then there are hundreds of billions more costs to businesses and to households in those countries as well on top of that.
But that figure will grow as global heating fuels even more natural disasters. Scientists had earlier concluded that the economic cost of 1 tonne of carbon dioxide emissions is about $1,000. But accounting for the long-term effects of these harmful discharges, a new study by a group of British researchers has found the real cost could be as much as 6 times that. And by the turn of the century, global GDP may be cut by 37%, more than twice the drop seen during the Great Depression. And environmentalists say it's developing economies that will be hit hardest.
By the middle of the century, for some of the poorest countries in the world, you're looking at a fifth of their GDP going on the costs of climate impacts.
Even countries that aren't bearing the brunt of extreme weather patterns are affected by the financial fallout.
There was a strong tropical cyclone over in Bangkok and a lot of flooding in Thailand associated with that rainfall, and that rainfall then interrupted quite a lot of global supply chains. And so even though mainly in the automotive industry, so even though there was a disaster in one place, the economic ripples from it spread right the way across.
In November, at the UN's COP26 conference, around 200 countries agreed to start phasing down the use of fossil fuels and coal. They also committed to increasing pledges to reduce emissions next year, but critics say the agreement didn't go far enough.
As a climate scientist, it's very difficult not to be disappointed in the outcomes from COP, because we need to do so much more quickly.
And there's commitment for countries to go faster on their targets. There's commitments for countries to double climate adaptation, for example. But there are some big gaps in terms of the finance that was promised to developing nations.
For many who attended COP26, the final agreement was disappointing, not just because they fear the deal won't halt global heating fast enough, but for those in poorer countries, they have returned home without the money they need to survive in their changing climate. Sarah Morice, TRT World.
Bob Ward is the Policy and Communications Director at the London School of Economics Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment. He told us more about the economic toll of extreme weather events.
Well, we've seen all around the world major extreme events that have exceeded previous expectations, and the damage could be long-lasting. Usually what you see after an extreme event is initially an economic surge as people start to repair. But the problem has been that we are creating an environment in which people now expect to see these events happening time after time. And you then create a high-risk environment in which investors are afraid to invest because they think that infrastructure will be destroyed and business will be lost. And indeed, where you kill people and where you injure them, that, of course, has a long-term economic impact because those people are no longer available to the economy. So all around, it's bad for the economy, even if you do get an initial surge in in the economy as people start to repair after damage. The countries that gathered in Glasgow in November for COP26 acknowledge that the current set of pledges put forward are collectively not sufficient to reach the target of limiting warming to no more than 1.5 Celsius degrees. We've already seen more than 1 Celsius degree, and we've seen all the impacts around the world over the past year that are associated with that. So the countries agreed in Glasgow to come back by the end of this year, by the next UN Climate Summit, which will be held in Egypt, and will bring forward stronger pledges. The pledges that are currently on the table are more consistent with warming of around 2 Celsius degrees, perhaps a bit more, perhaps a bit less. But remember that the Paris Agreement commits every country to action which would limit the warming to well below 2 Celsius degrees and pursue best efforts towards 1.5 degrees. So it really is clear that the countries have not done enough to reach that target laid out in the Paris Agreement.